You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello, and welcome to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guest this week, Rebecca Vincent. Rebecca is here because she has gone through the experience of a breast cancer diagnosis and is also active. This month, October 2023, is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so it seemed like a nice juxtaposition to actually have a guest on to talk about her experience. So, Rebecca, tell us a little bit about yourself, and more importantly, when and how were you diagnosed? Because actually it's a slightly different story than one a lot of people have.
Yes, hello, how are you? I was diagnosed 4 years ago, and the reason my diagnosis came about because I was made redundant from a company that offered a health screening program, which I'd actually never used. But then when I was made redundant, I decided I'm going to go through with the health screening, and they offered the option of doing a mammogram, which, given that I was under 50, I was surprised to see. But I took it, just said yes to everything. And they picked up something that they were, very suspicious about, because they contacted me to say, go see your GP, make sure you follow this up. So that was how it was picked up that I had, ultimately that I had breast cancer, yeah.
So there were no signs, symptoms, there was nothing, you hadn't felt anything, there was absolutely nothing to sort of indicate.
No, I'd had a cyst that was still there, but it was identified many years ago as a cyst, and there was no real change in it. So this was mostly a surprise, yeah. Yeah.
And it just goes to show the importance that if you do have these sorts of initiatives, these health programs and things like that, take advantage of them. So once you were diagnosed, what sort of treatment did you go through?
I had a operation. My operation was actually a reduction because part of the cancer I had was still in the milk ducts. So to do that, they do a reduction. And then I had radiotherapy afterwards.
So there was no spread or anything like that?
It was caught very early, and it was actually a small lump that they downgraded from stage 2 to 1 after the operation, when they could obviously tell the size. So that was nice, and no spread in the lymph nodes or anything like that.
Excellent news, though, and a testament to the fact that it was picked up early, which obviously makes treatment
absolutely yes.
Less invasive.
Later treatment, I'm sure I would have had chemotherapy, drugs that potentially would have affected you, and early treatment meant that, or early catching and treatment meant that I didn't have any of that and avoided an awful lot of the bad side effects.
So what side effects did you experience?
I have actually been very fortunate, and the only side effects I have received is from the drugs, and it just makes me hot at night.
Right, okay. So you're taking the hormone treatment now?
Yes.
Anyone who's listening who isn't familiar, hormone treatment kind of kicks off the hormones that the cancer can feed on. So in the case of women, it will quite often put you into premature menopause, or it can actually affect how you respond to it. So it's kind of, they're not much fun, are they? But for a lot of people, there are side effects that really do impact on things like sleep and stuff as well.
Yeah, and I did have some at the beginning, but they all seem to have faded within about 3 or 4 months. So I've been lucky in that respect.
That's good. So what sort of activity were you doing before you were diagnosed?
So before I was diagnosed, I was going to the gym, but I would have said I wasn't terribly focused with it. And I was going and I was doing things when I was there, but I think it wasn't really being effective in my health or anything, or weight loss or anything like that. It definitely wasn't improving my fitness. So
So it's more a question of sort of just going to the gym rather than having a specific program or a specific aim in mind.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you know what? I think there's probably a lot of people out there who are the same, and it's like you say, there are benefits. Obviously, doing anything is a good thing, but sometimes when you do just go to the gym without a purpose in mind, it's hard to really work on your health and work on your progress. As I say, there are benefits, but it makes it a little bit harder. So what made you start to be more active? Because you're a lot more active now, aren't you?
Yeah. So part of it was the diagnosis, and you start reading up about everything. The advantage of breast cancer is there's a lot of research about it, and there's like Breast Cancer Now website that gives a lot of detail to you that you can trust. And one of the things I did read was that a sedentary lifestyle obviously is not good for a lot of cancers, and just going to the gym in the evening or once a day activity doesn't completely get rid of that risk. So that made me think, okay, so I can build a little bit of activity, and it is sometimes just a little bit of activity into every day. So I'll walk up the stairs more often than take the lift when I'm in the office, and most days I will go out for a half-hour walk at lunchtime and then potentially do something in the evening, even if it's just walk up to the shop. But it was definitely the diagnosis and then reading up further that made me do that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Were you given that sort of advice, or was it something you read up about? What sort of advice did you get?
It was something I read up about. I did ask the nurses when I was being treated, and I have absolutely no complaints about the treatment I received. But the one thing I did have a hard job was trying to get them to give any advice on activity, when to get more active, how much more active I could be. And in the end, they said something that made me go, right, okay, I will do it based on my personal feelings, how I feel, how my body feels, and just went through with that. Yeah.
And to be honest, to be fair, and to be honest, nurses have got enough on their plate that they haven't got the time to find, read up and learn and become experts in physical activities. And this is where, people like myself, people out there who specialize in this from a physical activity point of view are so important, because we do have that knowledge about physical activity for people who are going through cancer treatment or recovering from it. Whereas, nurses, to be fair, they've got way more on their plate than sort of sitting down and talking about activity, and fair enough. And I know it's something that a lot of us are working much harder to get more kind of joined up information. So having qualified fitness professionals within the units, within the treatment sites, who can actually answer those questions. So the nurses can say, do you know what? Don't know. Go and talk to Sarah.
Yeah.
Who knows? And would that have helped you, or do you think you were just determined to sort of find out more on your own anyway?
I suppose part of my treatment for myself, I suppose you'd call it, was me researching it and finding out a bit of information myself. But I think it probably would have helped. As it happened, I live somewhere that's got quite a nice walk around my estate. So I'd started just generally walking more anyway, because I had the time, because I wasn't working. But still, it was only short walks. So it wasn't like I was taking, going for 2, 3, 4 hour walks or anything. It was just half an hour around the estate. But I think it would have helped to do other things if I'd had that advice from the nurses. And again, say no complaints about the treatment, but that's just something that they're not as aware of, I suppose.
No, and that's fair enough. It's not their zone of genius. It's not their zone of specialty. And why should it be? They've got an awful lot of knowledge. But I know for a lot of people, a lack of knowledge, a lack of information can put people off, because they're kind of, I'm not sure how much I can do, or what might be safe and what might not be. We do know from the research that most activity is safe, and a lot of it is down to the way you feel and how you respond. So sort of starting off with these walks, and I'm a big believer that the more we can build into everyday life, kind of sneaking activity in, and it becomes that habit, that lunchtime walk and things like that, I think it's much easier to keep going, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what was it about just walking to start with that you found beneficial?
Well, obviously it's just nice to be outside. was lucky that it was a good year in the sense that we didn't have too much rain. I found some podcasts that I like to listen to when I was walking, and even something as silly as because I was only diagnosed this time of year, so it was just before Christmas. At Christmas, my boyfriend bought me a stupid hat to wear outside. So it was just little things like that meant, you were happy to go outside. But I would also do a few things inside, like there's little things you can do, just keeping your muscles moving by doing a few bits of, you don't want to call them weights because it puts people off, but just kind of a few stretches and a kind of, a few squats and a few things like that, just around the house as you're doing the cleaning or the cooking as well, just to get that extra little tiny bit of movement in. And
that's one of the things, isn't it? If it's convenient, if it's accessible, you're more likely to do it. So as you say, just lifting a few things, lifting the kettle, a full kettle, or doing some squats, you don't have to go anywhere or get changed or find your membership card and things like that. Yeah. And I think sometimes we underestimate the sort of the short bursts of little things that you can just do while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, while you're brushing your teeth. And again, I think it's knowing that even a small amount of activity, even just doing 10 squats or press-ups against a wall, is beneficial.
Yeah.
I think. Do you think a lot of people think, if I can't go to the gym for an hour, then there's no point in going?
Oh, absolutely. I've definitely spoken to people that exercise or activity is a full hour's worth of intense exercise. And if you're not sweating at the end of it, it's not worth doing. And that's absolutely not something that I think is the case. It's movement, getting out and about, just, I mean, it could be just doing, when you go shopping, being a little bit more vigorous when you're walking up and down the aisles than a complete amble. That can make all the difference.
It's really interesting. There was some research published quite recently about using trackables or wearables, watches and things like that, activity trackers, and they were saying that people said that when they went to the gym, they said they were doing like an hour of vigorous activity, but it actually broke down to about 15-20 minutes when it was measured properly.
Yeah.
And they said in their everyday life they did none. But when it was measured properly on the wearables and things, they were actually doing at least 10 minutes a day of vigorous physical activity, just doing around the housework and the shopping and things like that. And I think sometimes it's very easy, particularly when you're going to the gym, to overestimate the amount of activity you actually do, but also to underestimate what you do in everyday life. And can I ask, do you still go to the gym?
Yes, I do still go to the gym, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to have a personal trainer who shows me exercises that actually I can do at home and I could do without a lot of equipment, or I could use things like bottles of water or something like that as the weights. I bought some fitness bands that are relatively cheap. I think they were less than a tenner for the pack of 6. And they just add a lot of resistance to your workout as well. But then I also found some friends that are interested, and we just try out different exercise classes and different activity classes. So don't stick with all of them, but just it means that you're looking out for different things all the time as well.
Yeah, and actually trying things out is a big part, isn't it? Because, people sort of say, I don't know if I'd like that, or I'm not sure about this. But trying it out with friends, it's like, actually, I did like that. I'd like to go back and try it again. Or, no, not for me. And that's an important part of finding the activity that you stick with, isn't it? Whether it's, some people like the very heavy intensity, coming out sweating. Other people don't. But it's knowing what you like and enjoying what you do that I think is such an important part of sticking with it. But interesting you saying that the personal trainer shows you things you can do at home. I don't think a lot of people are aware that you can work with a personal trainer like that. It's okay, show me what I can do in my everyday life, rather than I've got to come and see you twice a week for the rest of my life. It's, you use the personal trainer to educate you into what you can do in everyday life. And has that really helped you with building activity more into your life?
Yeah, definitely. And he's definitely encouraging in that respect as well. And I'm not going to him to bulk up or anything like that. It's to maintain a level of fitness that is suitable for my life. So,
yeah.
And
I think this is, we talk about fitness, we talk about health, and sometimes we talk very generically, but actually it's what level of fitness do you need to live your life the way you want to? And that might be a huge level of fitness for somebody who wants to climb mountains or run marathons or do triathlons, whereas somebody who just wants to be able to get through their day, have enough energy to meet friends in the evening, it's a different kind of concept of fitness. And I think a good personal trainer can help you find the right level for you and what you need to do to achieve it, can't they?
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you're doing? Anything that you do regularly other than the home-based and popping to the gym? Popping to the gym, it's never a pop, is it?
Right at the moment, no, there's not. But I'm always willing to look at different things and see what comes up. There's a friend of mine that does rock climbing. So one day she said I can go along and I'll join her. A couple of years ago, somebody said I've never done a triathlon. So we did a triathlon. We did a short version. So it was a short swim, it was a short run, it was a short cycle, but it was just, again, just something different. And I look at it and I think I came 10 from the end. It wasn't like I wasn't super speedy or anything like that. It was literally just for my enjoyment. And so part of that was, and I think having gone through cancer, it kind of gave me that confidence to say, I don't care what other people think. It's what I want and what is good for me. I think that was part of the cancer diagnosis and going through it. It definitely just gave me that confidence. It's like, life's too short to worry about what other people think. So, yeah.
Interesting. I was just thinking sometimes if you like, the win is just doing it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's just giving it a go.
Yeah.
And there's things, I suppose most of us in our lives have tried all sorts of different activities and some stick, some don't. I'm very much lots of walking, outdoor stuff. Like you, I'll do some squats while I'm brushing my teeth, or I'll kind of focus on a body part every now and then. I'll use bands as well. I love bands. What about, have you ever tried anything like running or the 5K your way, or Couch to 5Ks or anything?
I did. When I was, after I finished my treatment, actually my local hospital did actually consider doing this Breast Cancer Now course called Going Forward. Something like that. Afterwards, which helps you with life after cancer, basically. And one of the leaflets that they put out was for this group called 5K Your Way, who are, they say their tagline is they're a cancer support group with a difference. So it's for anybody that's been affected by cancer, whether it's the patient, friends, family. We meet once a month to do the park run and go for coffee and cake afterwards. Most people walk the park run. Most people walk 5K once a month, and then we sit around chatting afterwards. Not some people I've heard say, they think you're going to be talking about cancer all the time. No, you're not. We sit around talking about cake or what you did at the weekend, or, grandkids or pets, or, it's anything but it's just being with that group of people that have had a similar experience to you. So if anything does happen, you have a bit of a wobble, you're with people that know what you're going through. But it's a good way of encouraging activity. I met some good friends through that. It's encouraged me to do the Couch to 5K as well, because actually when I first joined 5K Your Way, it was during lockdown, so they weren't meeting up. So by the time I'd done Couch to 5K, world had opened back up again. We could meet for the park runs. So I was actually able to run them in the end, but I would have been happy walking them.
Do you find that being, like you say, it's not a group that, right, okay, let's all talk about our cancer, but it's a group where actually people get a sense of what you're going through. So no experience is the same, no two people's experience is the same, but there's a kind of a sense of belonging, because you do kind of understand the experience in a much broader sense, which means that there's no awkward questions and there's no curiosity. It's much more of a kind of like, we're in this together, let's do something positive way.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it makes people feel comfortable about walking the park run. Obviously they had to give it a name, but the unfortunate side effect of it being called park run is everybody thinks you have to run it. And they're very much pushing for people to walk it. And there are a lot of people walking it now as well. So it's just a bad name in that respect. But yeah.
I could be wrong, but I think aren't there dedicated park walks now? Somewhere they actually say this is a park walk, not a park run.
There may be, but certainly one of the things you get in a park run now is a lot of them have the so they always have somebody called a tail walker at the very end, so that nobody finishes last. And they do have these people called park walkers that walk along, and they're encouraged to talk to people, other people that are walking on their own, just to make sure people are not alone. They don't finish last, and you have that companionship as you're going round. And I believe it's an NHS kind of sponsored or encouraged activity now as well.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, 5K, if you're fit and healthy, 5K is not a big distance, but for some people, just starting it's an achievement, and however long it takes you to get round can be really, really motivating, and not having the pressure of having to run it. I know parkrun, they also do kind of like you get rewarded for the number you do rather than the speed you do. I mean, I know they're obviously they tag people's speeds and things, but you get rewards, don't you, for doing a number of the events rather than the times that you achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like obviously they do the timings, so you can track that yourself, but the reality is when you're running around, you see people that are wearing t-shirts that say they've done 50 of them or 100 of them, and that's what encourages you to go along, not the speed that you're doing it at. And an awful lot of them actually have just because of the size of parks, do it in laps, so you might have 2 laps, so you could just do 1 lap if you wanted to, as a way of getting out and meeting people. But
it's just starting where you are. It's not thinking, right, I'm going to go and do a 5K, but it's right, actually I'm going to start with 500 meters. I'm going to start with a meter. Well, it might be, but just a kilometer. It's taking the pressure away and saying, right, that's an aim, that's something I can work towards, but right now this is what I've got the energy for, this is what I've got the motivation for. It's just a smaller amount, but I'm working towards something. And I think things like 5K, your Way Catch 5K, are really, really good because they allow people to do things in their own time.
Yeah.
And it takes the pressure off. And certainly if you are in treatment, if you've had surgery, you're having radiotherapy or chemotherapy and things, you've kind of got enough pressures on your time already. So being able to take back control of something must feel quite good. It's like, I'm going to do this my way.
Yes.
I'm going to do it in my time, rather than somebody saying, you've got to have this appointment, you've got to come then, you've got to be here at this time. So I think being able to sort of just have something in your life that's really positive and that you've got control over must be quite a benefit, mental health benefit as much as anything.
It was definitely straight after treatment or straight after surgery, being able to go out for a walk and just go as long as I wanted, which, sometimes was half an hour, sometimes would have been longer. But that was me doing it on my own, doing what I wanted. And I was in control. Nobody was saying I had to be here, there, wherever. And obviously, especially for breast cancer, that's just the top half of you that's been operated on. So you can walk. For most people, it doesn't, or, some people it does affect their limbs, but for me, it didn't. So I could carry on and do that as exercise. Yeah.
So, I mean, just mention mental health there, but do you feel that doing some sort of activity, keeping yourself active, was important for your mental health?
Yes. Yeah, it is that element of control, but just generally getting out, and it helps you clear your mind. You have to concentrate on something different. What am I doing next? Am I doing this right? And when you start paying attention to your form a little bit as well, without being too technical, it's like you start having to concentrate on something else on your body that's not the cancer, basically. So it does help with your mental health, absolutely.
Did you find, I mean, anyone who's listened to any of these podcasts will know that, being outside, being in nature is quite a big bit of a thing of mine. But do you find there's any difference between going outside for a walk for your mental health or going to the gym, which is traditionally tends to be inside?
Yeah. Yes, and if we can do, like, even my personal training sessions, if we can do them outside, we do, just because it is that much better.
Right.
A warm-up will be a walk around the field rather than walking on the treadmill. Again, because you don't need that much equipment to do it, a few weights, you can do that outside as well. But yeah, definitely going out for a walk. I'd rather go out for a walk outside than walk on a treadmill, absolutely. And it's especially, well, even when you're walking around a town, it's still, there's plenty to look at, plenty of things to keep your mind active if you think to look out for them.
I think for me as well, when you're outside, you kind of tend, because you get distracted by nature, by the shops, by whatever's going on. I think sometimes you walk further, whereas being on a treadmill can be quite dull.
Yes.
But there's also, if you're walking like to the shops, my local shops, the closest one's probably about 3-minute walk, if that. But I can walk to the shop and back, and it's kind of like if I'm having a bad day and I've done something, whereas I wouldn't go to the gym and get on the treadmill for 5 minutes because I'd feel awkward. People are like, oh, she wasn't on there for very long. Whereas, if I really haven't got time or I haven't got the energy, a very short walk in nature will just, it might not be doing much for my physical activity levels, my fitness levels, but it gives me an energetic boost to my brain. And quite often I'm more likely to keep going because I just think, do you know what, I'll just go the long way back home because I just fancy a bit longer outside.
Yeah, actually, I've done that many times. I've gone out for a quick walk to the shop and then thought, it's not too heavy what I've got, and I will do a much longer walk back. Because once you've got out and started moving, it's much easier to keep moving. It's that initial oomph to get out, I suppose. That's the hard thing sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I kind of quite often recommend to people is that they kind of almost make an appointment for activity. So at a certain time, like you say, you go for a walk at lunchtime from the office. It's kind of like, right, now that's my walk time. And it's whether it's 5 minutes or 30, some days you might sort of go, do you know what, I'm not in the mood today. Like if somebody's at home, even just opening your back door or your front door and just sort of saying, right, okay, I'm just going to take 10 deep breaths. It's my walk time. I'm going to take 10 deep breaths, but then I'm going back inside because today it's not happening. But I've still kept that appointment, even if it was literally 10 breaths. Do you think that's important for people, is to create a regular time slot for it rather than just, I'll go later, I'll go later, I'll go later?
Yeah, I would often find, especially when I was working from home during the lockdowns, I'd go to bed at night saying, right, okay, I'm going to do this tomorrow morning. And because I've made that plan for myself, I was far more likely to do it. The plan could have literally been, I'm going to go for a walk first thing in the morning before I sit down at the laptop. But it did mean 99 times out of 100, I would do it. And that made all the difference, I think, yeah.
Did you get your kit ready the night before as well?
Sometimes, yes. Especially since you don't want to wake up the other person that's in the room and things like that. So that was my excuse. It's like, I don't want to wake them up. But it meant that when you got up in the morning, you already had that in your head that you were going to do that. I also found it was important, though, to not beat myself up if I didn't do it. Because I know a lot of people it kind of panics them a lot that they haven't done the exercise. And I found out fairly quickly it was important. I try and do something every day, but if I don't do anything big, or I don't do that big thing I was going to do, the long walk or whatever, that's okay.
But this for me is where having that sort of appointment where you say, right, just as an example, 10 o'clock is my walk time, and you open the door and you just think, do you know what, it's pouring with rain, I didn't sleep very well, I'm just not feeling it today, so actually I'm just going to stand here, I'm going to look at the rain for a few minutes, and I'm going back inside. You've still done something. You've still kept that up. Like I say, it's that keeping that appointment. Do you know what, I didn't do the rest of it, but I still turned up for it. I do things like yoga, and if I'm really just not in the mood for it, it's nope, it's yoga time, so I'm just going to sit on my mat and meditate for 5 minutes. I've kept that appointment, and to me, actually, once you start, sometimes, even if you're really not feeling it, sometimes you just think, well, like you say, I'll walk back the long way, I'll just do a little bit, and that is just, I've kept my appointment, I'm good. I'm good to go. But I think it's like you say, it's not saying I've failed or I've missed it or I haven't done it. But it's letting yourself say, do you know what? No, not happening today. Don't feel like it.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit at home and eat chocolate. That's what I'm in the mood for. Why not?
I would try not to eat the chocolate too much, but yeah, just generally.
Yeah, you have too much, but equally, if that's what feels right to you on that day, it kind of comes under the self-care thing, doesn't it? Don't beat yourself up. But is there anything else that you did? We've talked about the gym, you've talked about sort of the 5k your way and couch to 5k and things. Is there anything else that you found really helpful? You mentioned stretching earlier and things. Are things like that really important to you?
Yes. So I must admit, I'm not the best at doing them. I do tend to forget to do stretches at home. But, one of the things after my surgery, they gave me some stretching exercises to do. Yeah. So I do try and do those at home occasionally, and just generally. So what did somebody say to me the other day? When you see a dog get out, the first thing they do is stretch, because that's what you should be doing. That's the natural thing for a body to do. So,
I know, it's funny, isn't it, when you watch dogs and cats, because within the fitness field, it's always like you must warm your muscles up, you must warm your body up before you stretch, and it's like you don't see a dog and a cat jogging on the spot for a little while before they stretch. They do it slowly, they do it gently, they just extend, and it is such a lovely feeling. And again, even before you get out of bed, you can just literally lengthen everything. And even that can be quite a nice way of just building something into your life, can't it?
Oh, yeah. It's funny enough, a few years ago, I read something about tensing all your muscles one at a time before you go to bed or when you're in bed. And that absolutely feels great, because you start with your toes, tense all the way up, do a full body tense, and then actually you relax and everything just calms down, and frankly, you fall asleep better as well, I think.
Yeah, it's always a good thing to do. I mean, I have to admit, outdoors stretching, things like that, I think are really, really important, because I think we get quite tense generally in life, not necessarily from stress or anything, but just from the positions we're in. We're sat down and our muscles, even when people think, oh, I'm sitting down, I'm not using my muscles. Yeah, you are, because if you weren't, you'd fall off the chair.
Yeah.
Your muscles are constantly being used. So actually, even short, just little, stretching up when you're sat in a chair is really, really important. So is there any advice you would give to anybody listening who either has somebody who's been diagnosed recently or is going through treatment, or knows somebody who's gone through treatment and is nervous about becoming active?
The best advice I could give would be just get active. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be that walk to the shop. It can be walking up the stairs. If you can find somebody that will go for a walk with you, all the better, because that distracts you. You tend to walk further. You probably keep a slightly better pace, but don't feel so tired at the end of it.
Yeah.
Walking outside, definitely. I did quite a bit of that in the end. But I did start off relatively short. Find somebody to do it with is generally the best thing I think you can do. Find somebody to encourage you.
There's most of the big websites, the big organisations, and Macmillan and places all have information on activity and DVDs and all sorts that you can access. So there is quite a lot of support out there. You might, like Rebecca did, you might have to find it, but there is a lot of support out there. And I think the more people that kind of access the support, the more it spreads, doesn't it? People just tell each other,
yes,
this is going on and that's going on. And I think that's really good. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming to chat. Obviously, for anyone who's out there who's concerned, do go for your screening. Male, female, whatever, go for your screening. Go for your screening, because you just never know what's going to be picked up. And the earlier you can get a diagnosis, the easier, I'm not saying it's easy to treat, but, it's much better, isn't it? So thank you. And let's all get screening compliant and make sure that we keep active as well, because we do know that, regular activity does reduce your risk. So it's definitely something to do. So any final thoughts, or just get active message, really?
Yeah, definitely. Just get active. I say it helps with your side effects. It helps with your mental health. I would big supporter of it, definitely, as much as
Excellent.
you can.
Thank you so much for coming along. Guys, you've been listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho. Don't forget to check in on my website and the usual places to find out more, and I will see you all very soon. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.